Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Heidi, and I'm part of the Letters in Science counseling team. Thank you so much for being a part of this event.
Irma, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Irma Moreno, and I'm a pre-health advisor at the Career Center. Thanks for coming.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly. I'm part of the LNS Career Counseling team and also a pre-law advisor.
Hey everyone, Juan Garcia here. I'm a counseling services specialist at the Career Center, and I'll be helping with the Zoom tech stuff.
Okay, thanks everyone. So the way we'll run the panel is I'm going to have the panelists do a quick intro of themselves with a warm-up question. I have a few questions that I'm going to throw out to them, but very much this panel is driven by you, the students and the attendees. So, you know, other than a few warm-up questions, I would really like to incorporate the questions that you have for the general panel. So as we go, please include your questions into the chat. And then when I've done a few questions for the panelists, then I'll turn it over to your questions. We'll spend about 25 minutes doing general panel discussion, and then we'll break up into around about 2 breakout rooms. And we'll put the details of that up later. And you will also have an opportunity to ask specific questions to specific panelists in the breakout room. So if you feel like you don't want to share your questions to the larger group, that's okay. If you want to save it for a smaller breakout room, you can do that too. Okay, so I just realized I didn't introduce myself. My name is Mike Harris. I'm also at the Career Center, part of this great team on this career series. I support mostly the engineering and physical sciences students. Okay. So I'm gonna kick it over to the panel, and then I'll start with Ricardo, and the questions for each panelist are: share your name, your background, and what is a silver lining from being quarantined due to COVID-19? I know that may seem like an oxymoron, but what is a silver lining from being quarantined due to COVID-19? So Ricardo, you want to start?
I'm Ricardo Flores, and I'm currently your career counselor for students with disabilities at Cal, so go Bears. But I have a background. I've only been at UC for about 3 years, but I have a background in nonprofit, Big Brothers Big Sisters, if you guys have ever heard of them. I worked for them for quite a long time, and state government back in Texas. But all in kind of helping folks transition from either high school to college, or college to career, and always working on transitional skills with at-risk youth. But that's me. A silver lining. I have a couple, I guess. Number one, I'm able to be more barefoot, and I like to sport sandals a lot, and I couldn't really do that a lot pre-COVID at work. I also get to wear more baseball caps because of COVID hair. And then also, I'm 65-day streak working out every day. So that's my COVID silver linings.
Oh, great. Thanks, Ricardo. Jessica, let's go to you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Jessica Gorsuch. I work for the School of Public Health in the Center for Occupational and Environmental Health. My background is as eclectic as I am. I am a philosopher by trade, which is pretty cool, but I actually got into instructional technology, and I've really enjoyed bringing all of the parts of myself into that, and some of the things that I work on for representation in higher education of different backgrounds. So silver lining for COVID would be working remotely. I used to have a 3-hour commute every day, so I am not mad at that at all.
Okay, all right, you're winning so far with that answer. Alex, let's go to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Rodriguez. I currently work for Cal. I help with fundraising and event planning, and I graduated from Cal last year in psychology and ethnic studies. And I'm kind of just started out. I just hit my 1 year at my work, but I have a lot of interest, and that go from like psychology research to college mentorship. And I used to work at the Career Center when I was at Cal, so I did some career advising. And also part-time, I help do diversity recruitment retention work at the Wright Institute, which is a psychology graduate school here in Berkeley as well. And yeah, so silver lining from quarantine for me, similar to Ricardo, I love wearing like Adidas pants every day for work. I liked wearing professional clothes, but it gets so hot and I'm not with it. So I'm glad I can dress casually now.
Okay, thanks, Alex. All right, so this panel is not all Cal people. Danielle, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Danielle Carruthers. My background is in youth development. I've been working in the Bay Area for about 15 years, mostly with transitional age youth, so 18 to 25. I did focus for a while in my career working with youth coming out of systems like the foster care system or juvenile justice. Most recently, I've really focused on workforce development. In terms of silver lining, I'm not working right now. And so that's great. I get to kind of have a break from work. And my brother and sister-in-law had a baby 2 months ago, and I get to hang out with him all the time.
That's a great reason. Yeah, thanks, Danielle. And then Javier, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm from Cal though, so I was gonna try to break the trend, but I guess can't break the trend. But I'm from Cal. Let's see. I graduated from Cal 2017. And sorry, let me reintroduce myself. My name's Javier. I work in tech. I graduated in Cal in 2017. Yeah, I studied sociology and environmental science at the College of Natural Resources. I think it's called Rassler College now. Yeah, and in my line of work, I mainly I recruit for a company called ServiceNow. I think some of you all may have heard of it. I think Cal utilizes ServiceNow for the IT service management. So yeah, and I mainly focus on recruiting for underrepresented talent, underrepresented minorities, underrepresented women of color, women, and that doesn't that also extends to veterans, people with disabilities, yeah, just different identities. So happy to be here.
Okay, thanks, Javier. Well, you're not working for Cal, so that was the streak you broke. So don't worry, it still works. Okay, thanks everyone. So first question I'm going to kick off to the panel, and again encourage all the attendees, the students, to please put your questions into. Tell us about a time when you had difficulty being your authentic self in your career. So tell us about a time when you had difficulty being your authentic self in your career. I'll kind of just open this up. Maybe you just want to either raise your hand or just jump in.
I can start. Again, I'm Ricardo, and I would say prior to my work at Berkeley, I was known as Richie to a lot of my colleagues and friends. I had never put Ricardo on my resume until my Berkeley application. And when they called to have me interview, they asked for Ricardo, and it was more Ricardo. And I think I kind of seem to avoid, my accent sometimes just due to conditioning, social conditioning, and being around folks who are probably mostly English speakers first and things like that. But Ricardo got the job at Berkeley, and I prior to that, I kind of never saw myself really at a university, the caliber of Cal. I worked at nonprofit work. I worked for state government, that kinds of stuff, and those were all jobs Richie had. But this is the first job Ricardo ever got, and I kind of owe it to just kind of biting the bullet and recognizing that. Using my given name could potentially be helpful, and not, kind of professionalizing that a little bit more. And but yeah, I think it was difficult prior to that, just because of social conditioning.
Ricardo, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being vulnerable with us. Really appreciate you, man. Um, uh, I think so. How do you say it? So I think when I first transferred to Cal, it's not workplace environment. It's more like academic environment. And I think for me, being a student veteran, being an older student, I think initially I kind of felt like maybe a little bit out of place and not really understanding what a four-year university college campus operates like and what the culture is like. So really trying to um, understand the academic culture at Cal. So I think it was more like me trying to adapt, and maybe at times adapting means I couldn't be my authentic self 100% of the time. But it wasn't until later when I, slowly adapted and was able to more integrate with the culture, the academic environment, and the culture at Cal, when I felt like, okay, I can now be my authentic self and be, feel a more sense of belonging. So I think it was more of my academic experience than my work experience.
Hey, I can go next. I think that in my experience, there's been multiple areas in which you can't always show up as your fullest self. But I do know, and I don't know if many of you have heard of it, but the Crown Act was passed through the House of I think the House of Representatives very recently, and basically what that was is just allowing people to wear their hair the way that that they culturally wear their hair. And it seems like something so small, but to have somebody telling you that you need to straighten your hair because you're not professional, or you need to put it back, and the type of distance that comes on when you feel like you just can't be yourself as you were born. And this is a common place. And I know that I kind of started to fight against that norm years ago, and sometimes to my benefit and sometimes without. But I worked at Stanford before Berkeley, and I remember at orientation, I think there were maybe 4 or 5 other Black women there out of like maybe almost 200 people, and they all had their hair straightened, they all had their hair pulled back, and I had my hair out, and it's kind of wet right now, but it gets big. And I remember during lunch, the whole group came over to me and they were like, you know what, thank you so much for just showing up like that, because I was so afraid this morning just getting ready for work on what they would think if I just showed up with my hair down and curly and out. And I just felt like it was one of those moments where it was a little bit redeeming to say like, hey, we can show up the way that we are, and that's okay. So I know it's not something super crazy big, but it really is impactful.
I can jump in as well. I would definitely agree with Jessica on that. And I think that also extends to just expression of how you dress, specifically around cultural, cultural things that you might wear to work. In my last job, this came up a lot during different celebrations as we expressed celebration towards cultural days or holidays, and what was, quote unquote, allowed or not allowed. And, I think one of the things that I think about is how am I showing up for the young people that I work for or work with, and how am I giving them the space to be able to bring their authentic selves. So for me, it's always important to, just speak up and say it, and really try to move the needle around so people are able to really bring their authentic self.
Yeah, I can speak to that as well, of expression of like identity like through dress. When I started working, like when I had my first like full-time internship, like in an office, and in this job now, both my parents are like, oh, like be very like professional, like don't wear anything too colorful, or like I love dyeing my hair. Like this is getting bleached this weekend. It's been too dark. And I always like to wear earrings. I have like a ring and a bracelet I wear like every day. And I also like wearing like bright colors and stuff like that. But my parents were like, no, like don't do that. Like it's too loud. It won't fit in. And so I was very scared. And I mean, I've already had a thing with like button up clothing because it's so restricting already. And I'm just like, I can't even look cute or like feel good in how I'm dressing. But when I like kind of started slowly like pushing like the boundaries and just kind of wearing what I really did want, I found like my coworkers actually liked it and were like, oh, like I love like this outfit today. And or even those small compliments and just that kind of acceptance, it was just like, oh wow, like, you know, I can kind of help normalize it, encourage other people to dress how they want. And I found myself feeling a lot better at work when I started dressing the way I wanted. Of course, like there are some like limits and stuff. I don't wear anything crazy, but I dress loudly like how I like.
Yeah, thanks everyone for sharing those. And Alex, what you just said is kind of leads into my next question is that, you know, you all share that at some point you've either had to or you felt pressure to compromise a part of you or your identity or culture to fit in. But now, you know, many of you, maybe except for you, Alex, you're still kind of more in the early part of your career, but many of you are more advanced. So what techniques do you utilize to balance that? So how do you get by? How do you get by each day with balancing how you want to show up with the norms of where you're showing up? Like what techniques can you pass on to the students?
Okay, I'll start again if everybody doesn't mind, but mainly I just challenge everybody to try to share your truth as much as you can every day. Wake up every morning to do that so you can bring your authentic self. And I guess for myself in particular, you know, not only do I work with students with disabilities at Cal, but I am a person with a disability. And so I have to kind of, you know, constantly bring my verbal ability to advocate for, you know, my inclusion or the access needs that I might have as a person who lives with blindness. But then also, you know, in addition to that, you know, being able to weigh, you know, what is it, you know, affecting my work product and having to figure that out and kind of negotiate that balance. But mainly it's, you know, I have to be able to tell people and be honest with them about what I feel, what I need, who I am, and how I could be the best productive. I guess a big example right now with students is that, you know, I kind of choose to have the phone conversation as opposed to, you know, standing up in front of Zoom all day with students. And that's just kind of something that I, as a career counselor, have asked, and students are kind of accommodating, and some would rather be on Google Meet or Zoom, but I still like the old phone kind of thing. It has a better connection, but it meets one of my access needs. But I have to kind of share that truth in advance with everybody so that everybody's a little more comfortable and kind of understands me.
I can jump in. I think it's important to understand the difference between something that maybe is holding you back based on your identity versus a norm that's in like in a workplace. My previous job that I worked at had really strict rules around what we wore and how we wore it and all of that. And for me, it was asking those questions around, so like, what are we solving for? What are we trying to learn here? Or what are we trying to convey? And so for me, I would say a technique would just be asking questions. You know, why are the rules or why are the guidelines that way? You know, if it's something that maybe is cultural, having those conversations, which can be really uncomfortable, but being able to say, you know, based on my culture, this is what, you know, I feel comfortable in, or this is how I want to express myself. Being able to kind of push and in a way that, you know, you're not going to you know, ruffle feathers, but definitely to be able to to represent yourself and be true to yourself. I think that's really important.
Thank you so much for that. I can jump in also, and I think with that, I think I've had the experience in the past where I haven't felt the most welcome, you know, the way, and I think I kind of relate to, I think Alex, when you said, sometimes it's just the way that you dress, and I'm pretty laid back and I love like my crystals and I like to wear big sweaters and yoga pants, like you really can't get me out of that. But I think that one thing that I've learned when it comes to whether it's my hair, my culture, my identity, my expression, is before you even, you know, get to an organization that you want to work for, you know, survey the culture. And I think that every time I've gone in for an interview, I've made that one of my highlights, and some people love it. They absolutely love it. And the ones that don't are probably not for me, but it's asking those questions again. And it's, and it's speaking your truth and sharing what you need and why you need it. And I go into these, interviews and meetings, and I want to say, hey, this is who I am. How do you feel about that? How do you think I'll fit into your culture? And how does your culture, accommodate other people who maybe have other needs other than me? And saying those things up front, it kind of, for me, gives me a little bit of empowerment to speak my truth and be myself, and know that I'm going into an organization that's going to appreciate that. Because in the past, when I didn't, again, I ended up in places that felt too stuffy for me, or they didn't want me, to, maybe they weren't the type of people who liked when people spoke up, and you learn that really quickly. So yeah, again, I think, interviewing your interviewer and making sure that these spaces are your spaces, because there are jobs out there for everybody. There are careers out there for everybody. Find your place. And I think that's probably the best thing I've learned in all my years.
Okay, I'll go to the next question. And this is, this is an important question here for, I think, for students, is should students share aspects of their identity that could potentially impact their chances of being fully included in the workplace? So should they share those aspects of their identity that could impact their chances of being fully included in the workplace? If we say yes, they should share it, when is the best time to share that with their colleagues or supervisor?
I can kind of actually just kind of take a stab at this one up front, but I think that I kind of call it kind of like surveying your level of like surveying your identity and figuring out what things are most important to you that are absolutely necessary. If you're LGBT, do you want to work for somebody that's not going to accept you now or later? No. My partner, I'm a lesbian, and my partner applied for a job in January during this, big transitionary period. And they basically told her, we just don't talk about that stuff here, so don't talk about it. I mean, they were wide open, and of course that wasn't the job she chose. So I think that everybody, no matter your age, no matter your experience, you have the right to choose what you share at any point in time. And I believe that even as somebody who advocates for, diversity, inclusion, equity, and all of those things, I still know that not everybody feels the same level of comfort. Maybe you need this job, and maybe it's not the time and place for you. But at the end of the day, don't let anybody tell you that you can't share, and also don't feel obligated to do so. This is really, it's your journey, and however you get through it is going to be for you. And again, just kind of survey the things that are important to you and find out what stuff are non-negotiables. And the rest of it you can kind of share whenever you're ready, or you can share it all up front. But I think we all have that choice.
And one thing I work with students on a lot of times is, a strength-based approach to disclosing your full truth. And, everybody has a struggle, and when that struggle needs to be known or should be known, it's probably to everybody's best interest to figure out how to, best highlight that innovation, your uniqueness. We live in a time right now that difference is probably being respected at its most ever in our lifetime. And so those of us who are different, and all of us are, and unique and awesome, we should try to figure out how to articulate that as many times as we can to help, diversify, not only the workplace, but our world.
I can hop in too. I also agree, I think Jessica, who said like surveying like your workplace and seeing like when might be a good time to do so. For me, again, I'm still kind of just starting out, so I'm still learning a lot along the way. But I talked, we're part of just strength-based, and so like I knew with my job, like I interact with a lot of people, and like the communications I send out go out to people, and so I'm first gen, I'm queer and Latinx, and so I think I'm like, well, there are all these communities that usually aren't thought about as a whole, and I'm like, but I'm part of all of those, and like I can add that perspective to your communications. So like that, it talked about that like my interview process, and I still do it in my work now. And I think my most recent example where I was like, you know, I'm thankful I have my identity that I'm present here in this workplace is that because I work in like fundraising stuff, I knew a solicitation went out to alumni and the heading said like, it was like, so it would have looked like, hey, Mr. Rodriguez, we're gonna call you soon. So it had everyone's like Mr. or Mrs. And so I'm sure they didn't mean any harm, but that is assuming a lot of people's genders. And I had a few friends and alumni from Cal that I follow on Twitter that are transgender, and they were commenting like, they tweeted, they're like, how the hell am I supposed to donate to Cal when they're misgendering me like again and again? And I saw that and I was like, damn, I'm like, and I always get upset sometimes when I see like big university stuff because I'm just like, oh, they're not going to change. And I was just like, oh, but I work for the university. I see this. I know who to talk to. I was like, I should say something. And so I emailed my director, I screenshotted tweets. I was like, look what our solicitations are doing. Like, we should never have gender in here. Like, do you want our alumni to feel this way? And I was like, I'm not transgender, but I'm a part of the community. And you know, this isn't right. And like, if Cal is about this, like, you got to show up. And they were very responsive and receptive. And I'm really thankful they were, and they were really appreciative of it. And I thought that was a great time for me to realize, like, this is when my identity should come in. And ever since then, I've definitely been like, my identity isn't like a weakness, it's more of a strength. And if a company can't realize that, then they shouldn't have me. Why have you?
Javier, anything you want to add there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're in a very uncertain time for a lot of folks, and I think especially during being in a pandemic-induced environment, a lot of people a lot of people like us have the privilege to work from home or work remote. So you know, and that adds a layer of complexity to maybe how you may transition into, you know, whether it's a new what academic environment for you as students, and or, you know, if you're graduating soon and you're transitioning and you're trying to look for a new role, and how to really position yourself to be noticed by employers, by recruiters, by potential hiring managers, potential future new teammates. Um, and I've seen, you know, I've seen people that has just been really embracing of their identities, and they put it out there on LinkedIn. They put it out there on the causes and the things that they really care about, and that can be a strength, especially for some recruiters or hiring managers or thought leaders in the space, in that particular community space, that are looking into talent and looking for people that are open and vulnerable to share that aspect of their identity. But at the same time, there are, you know, organizations or teams and people out there that that may not embrace maybe people from certain that identify with certain groups. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, and now just being in this very complex remote environment, especially if you're going to be working in a job where you will be remote and your teammates will be remote, and there's, you know, there's not a high probability in the beginning you're going to be able to meet your manager or your future teammates. You know, there's like I think you really have to have, you know, you really have to kind of get to know people first at that level, whatever level that is. And and I think Jessica's right, it's kind of like your choice. It's when you feel comfortable, when to share, you know, your identity, to share your, you know, whatever makes your content of character or your personality, right? I think, you know, you know, we're in this like new environment. This is all new, right? So I don't, you know, in this environment, you know, I can only share what has been done in the past, but nothing has, you know, there's no real document of you know, this type of, or at least not that I'm aware of kind of like research about identities in this type of environment, and how that may impact your work or the way you feel like a sense of belonging at work. So I think it's going to be up to you, and you're going to have to really learn how to adapt and read the environment that you're going to be in, whether it's virtual or in a role that requires you to be physically present, right? So yeah, it's hard to say. There's no blanket response, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no real silver bullet answer to a lot of these questions. You're right. I want to jump to a question from one of the students, and it's in the chat. You can probably see it, Ricardo. I'll read it out for you too. I'll read the question and then maybe generalize it for the group too. But what if you're undocumented? Wouldn't you be at risk to disclose your status? I don't know how you get a job if the job had to screen me, but I don't have a social security number. And I think if we could weigh in on that specific question, but also just what if there is at a point you need to disclose something like status or maybe something else that you think could actually stop you from getting the job? Do you lie? Do you not choose to not answer? So maybe if we could answer the kind of the student's question then, but then also generalize it.
Well, as the resident panelist who works at Career Center, I want to just promote, we have one of the most credible and awesome career counselors who works with our international population. And so usually that's where undocumented may derive from. But there's also just the hope in that and the knowledge that there are companies that are willing to pay for your work visa or sponsor that. And so it's mainly targeting those and working with Jing Han, who's our international career counselor, to kind of network into that before you exit Berkeley for sure.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit on that too. So there are companies, and I can just kind of speak for tech because I work in the tech industry, but in tech, there are companies that don't agree with Trump's administration's executive order and kind of how they interpret DACA and how they may want to roll back DACA. I can say, for example, ServiceNow, we are actively lobbying Congress and legislators so that they do not roll back DACA and that we do embrace candidates that may be a candidate that fall under the DACA circumstances or the DACA category as a candidacy. So I think there is opportunity now that we have the internet, we have access to information, we have access to different different ways to access information. I think we just got to really do our research on the companies that do care about these social issues, social political issues, right? I don't know which exact tech companies that do not support the Trump administration's executive order and the way they want to roll back DACA, but there are a lot of companies that do not support that are actively lobbying against it, and that have already actively communicated to company-wide why candidates that fall under undocumented status or DACA status are still valuable to companies like ours. So to be short, just really have to research on what companies' stance are and if they make those public stances, and or if you're talking to a recruiter, you may just be transparent, because I think at the end of the day we all have to try our best to be transparent about stuff like that, and yeah, you have to be very careful too, right? So I would do a lot of research on these organizations, institutions, and companies ahead of time.
I just wanted to add, although I don't work for the Career Center, so that's not my area of expertise, that I do know that there are community organizations and groups that will help you navigate that situation, outreach to them, and do things that make you feel safe, because at the end of the day, that's what's most important is your safety and your ability to stay in your home. So absolutely.
I'm gonna ask just one more question. Before I do that, I'm gonna drop the descriptions of the 2 breakout rooms into the chat. So for the students, while the panelists are giving their answers to this last question, just have a look at the two descriptions of the two rooms. You should, and I say should, have the ability to opt into either one of the rooms. But even if you don't, for some reason, if you don't have that option, you can just, through the chat function to Juan, just let him know which room you'd like to go into. So like I said, I'll put the description in now, you can read through it, and then after we finish with the next question, we'll then break into two rooms for a couple of minutes for a more focused discussion. I want to come back to something I think that Javier, you mentioned about working remotely. How do we show up to work when we're working remotely? So for the panelists, what advice do you have for students to help them stay engaged and build relationships when they're doing it remotely?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go ahead?
Sorry.
No, do you want to go? Okay, I'll go. I think it's really important to realize that working remote is, although you're not in the office, you have to really keep your mindset that you are physically going into the office. And I think specifically at the early stages of your career, you're going to want to think about the things that how you want to build your professional brand. What are the things that you want to be known for? Your reputation, follow through, replying to emails, things like that. I think it's super important in terms of building relationships. You can still do virtual coffees. You can ask people, hey, are you interested in maybe connecting about this certain thing that there was a meeting about? So I would say don't limit yourself because you're, at home. I'm on my couch right now. Don't limit yourself just because of that. You're going to want to, still be proactive and really put yourself out there to shine and show all of your potential.
I just wanted to say that, so with regard to remote work, I had a position that was on campus before we all went remote, but I actually was in the process of petitioning to have a fully remote contract. And I sat on it for a really long time because I was like terrified that, the imposter syndrome set in. I was like, they're going to think that I'm just one of those people that doesn't want to do my job and I don't want to show up. And it can be really difficult as a first gen, as as a person of color, as, all of these different parts of our identity that sometimes we hold a little bit of like, some of the outside stereotypes with, to be able to work remotely and feel really confident. And I think the one thing that that I've learned throughout this whole experience is just really being open, being authentic about what you can and cannot do, and knowing that that's enough, and resetting those expectations when you need to, communicating with your supervisors and your coworkers and letting them know where you might need a little help. I'm a parent and I've got, I'm in school again. And so I have all these things going on. And sometimes, my priorities are they're just really chaotic right now, just, in a world where we're fighting a pandemic and where, there's social unrest and a really shaky political climate. And, so I think that it's really important while we look at remote work to not only engage in those social activities that make us feel good, but also making sure that we're keeping a track of like our internal work and being able to really just show ourselves how much we're really getting done, using things like Asana, and maybe like kind of tracking what you do and being able to show people like, this is what I do. And yes, this takes X amount of time, and just being able to kind of, embody how awesome you really are, remote or in person.
I find it kind of hard for me working remote. I think a lot of it has to do with technology. I kind of am I'm more in the Generation X age bracket, and so technology's always kind of been something that I've had to learn and accept and grow with, and I feel like I kind of connect with people a little bit better in person, and when I could hear people, laughing uncomfortably with my corny jokes, or not always having to be on mute, or the gargly way we all sound sometimes through Zoom and kind of robotic and whatnot. It's difficult for me to listen actively as someone who's a counselor sometimes, but I do understand the situation that we're in, and it has taught me to embrace digital technology a little bit more. and also appreciate it because now I can still offer my services. It's just in a new and different way. And so anytime it's something happening new and that's outside of our comfort zone is challenging, but it's even more awesome when you get through it and you find new ways of doing things and could find those silver linings and say that you've actually overcome some of those laps of confidence.
Any last pieces of advice for students about how to show up in the remote world?
Be creative as you can be.
I said yes to being creative and figuring out like how to do new projects and just make relationships across Zoom and stuff like that. But also knowing like, I don't know what happened like with my role recently, but like at first, like with everything going virtual, it's just like I didn't have that much, but like within a few months and everyone got a hang of it, it was now everyone had new ideas and I felt a very big pressure to catch up with everyone. And for me, it's taken a really big toll on me and like, it was really affecting me. And yeah, I was like kind of working overtime and I didn't want to say anything because I was like, oh no, like I just want to show I'm doing a good job and I'm worth keeping, don't fire me. But it's not sustainable. And yeah, so learning really, this was talked about earlier, but like advocating for yourself is important and just trying to keep that kind of open line of communication. And if you can't have it with the supervisor, hopefully like wherever you work, there's at least that one person that you can count on. For me, it's one of my coworkers. She's like my work mom. She is a strong Filipino woman. And anytime I feel like something's up at work, I go to her first. And I'm like, can you tell me if this is like, should I be upset about this? Who do I talk to? And like, I kind of like triage with her before like hitting any issues or anything like that. And then I'll go on move forward with like that. So I think that's my recommendation. Know how to try not to overload too much to like prove yourself because you probably already have. And try to find your person at work because there always will be one.
Okay, yeah, thanks everyone for those answers. Thanks, Alex, for that too. You mentioned finding that person, and we're going to go into the breakout rooms now. And one of the questions we're actually hoping to inspire there is to talk about mentors and mentorship and how important that is for especially entry-level talent to find somebody that you can have as that person. Okay, so now we're going to transition to breakout rooms. Full disclosure, this is a new thing for us. We've tried to practice this, but it doesn't always work. But the option, we should have the option where you can opt into a breakout room. So once Swan makes the rooms available, what should happen is that you have the option of choosing breakout room 1 or 2. And I put the descriptions for those rooms into the chat. If for some reason, if you don't have the option of choosing your room, you can just message Juan or me or everyone just with your room number, and then we can manually put you in there. I see people are going in already. So, well, Alex, what do you got? Just under 10 minutes to come back to the main room.